We are looking at the road to the Civil War. This is the first part of a two-part video. The first step towards the road to Civil War is when slavery began in America. In 1619, a slave ship carrying approximately 20 African slaves lands in the Jamestown colony in Virginia. This is the first incidence of African slavery in America. It is the beginning of millions of Africans brought to America as slaves. Slavery is the cause of the Civil War. Without slavery, the Civil War doesn't happen. For that reason, slavery entering our country is a cause of the Civil War. Three-fifths compromise. The Civil War didn't have to happen. It wasn't inevitable. Slavery could have been outlawed before the Civil War. It wouldn't have been popular in the South, but it could have happened. The best opportunity would have been at the Constitutional Convention. The issue of slavery is brought up in relation to counting of the population in order to determine the amount of representatives in the House of Representatives. But outlawing slavery didn't happen. The three-fifths compromise, which did happen, is an embarrassing outcome from the convention. Although Southerners treated slaves as property, they wanted them to count as people for the purpose of determining representation to the House of Representatives, and thus giving them more power. Northerners didn't want to give Southerners that extra power, and felt that if a slave was considered property, they shouldn't count as a person in a population count. The result was a three-fifths compromise, which states that every slave counted as three-fifths of a person in the population count to determine representation in Congress. The invention of the cotton gin. Eli Whitney patented the cotton gin in 1794. The invention was one of the most significant developments in the sustainability of slavery into the 1800s. Some believed slavery could naturally go away, but the cotton gin significantly increased cotton production and increased demand for slaves among Southern cotton plantation owners. Cotton is sticky and has seeds that need removed. This is a long, painstaking process. The cotton gin made the removal of seeds much quicker and selling cotton more profitable. So cotton plantation owners wanted a large number of slaves in the field to pick cotton that can be passed through the cotton gin. King Cotton ensures that slavery will last. Louisiana Purchase. All or parts of 15 future states will be added in the territory that was the Louisiana Purchase. Although some of those states won't be added until years after the Civil War, more territory meant the possibility of either more free or slave states. The country had a delicate balance between free and slave states, and this added territory threatened to upset that balance. The uncertain status of this territory as free or slave will be one of the causes of the Civil War. The Missouri Compromise. In 1820, Maine and Missouri were ready to be added as states. The issue was, should they be free or slave? An agreement was made to allow Maine to enter as a free state and Missouri as a slave state to preserve the balance between slave and free states in Congress. As part of this agreement, the 3630 line of latitude was marked as a cutoff between slave and free. Anything below that line would be slave. On the map, the red states are all slave states. Texas is pictured red, but not yet part of the U.S. at the time of the Missouri Compromise. The western parts of the present-day U.S. were not even U.S. territory yet. Looking at the map, there's a lot more room for free states to join than slave states. This will be a cause of the Civil War. Nat Turner's Revolt. Nat Turner was an enslaved man who led a revolt against his owners. The revolt resulted in the death of 55 white people and over 200 black people. It stoked fears of other slave uprisings in the South and led to more oppression against African Americans in the South. The Nullification Crisis. The Nullification Crisis was a warning of what was going to happen nearly 30 years later. South Carolina was upset over a federal tariff law that was passed. That anger led to calls for South Carolina to secede from the United States and become an independent country. Although that didn't happen, it began to put in the minds of people in the South that they had the right to secede from the U.S. if they felt they were mistreated. The Mexican-American War. Like the Louisiana Purchase, this leads to more territory for the U.S. With the additional territory comes the question of free or slave states. Texas was annexed by the U.S. prior to the start of the Mexican-American War. This angered Mexico. Disputes between the U.S. and Mexico over the border of Texas led to war, which was a victory for the U.S. and gave the U.S. much of the present-day Southwest. Many of the top Civil War generals got their first military action in the Mexican-American War.